They looked like America's favorite heroes, dashing across screens in cowboy hats, tuxedos, and uniforms. But what if I told you, before the bright lights of Hollywood, these men held rifles, mounted machine guns, and took lives? Not in movies, on real battlefields. One of them had a kill count higher than nearly any soldier in American history. This is the chilling truth behind 10 Golden Age actors who weren't just playing heroes. They were trained killers. Tonight, we're peeling back the curtain on the dangerous double lives of 10 Golden Age stars. Men whose war records read like thrillers and whose battlefield scars followed them to Hollywood. Stick with me, because the story of the #1 actor on this list will change how you see Hollywood forever. 10. James Stewart, the bomber pilot who became a general. Behind his soft-spoken, everyman charm, James Stewart carried the weight of a bomber pilot who flew deadly missions over Nazi Germany. Already a Hollywood star, Stewart was one of the first actors to enlist after Pearl Harbor, demanding combat duty rather than safe assignments. He got his wish, flying B-24 Liberators with the 445th Bombardment Group. Stewart led at least 20 missions, dropping thousands of pounds of explosives in raids where survival was never guaranteed. For his courage, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, multiple air medals, and the French Croix de Guerre. After the war, he stayed in the Air Force Reserve, eventually rising to Brigadier General, the highest rank ever held by a Hollywood actor. But Stewart rarely spoke about his wartime experiences. Friends noticed the change instead. Director Anthony Mann said Stewart returned with a darkness and intensity that deepened his work. His post-war films, especially Mann's westerns and Hitchcock thrillers, revealed obsession, trauma, and moral ambiguity that weren't present in his pre-war roles. As Henry Fonda once put it, Jimmy left for the war as a movie star and came back as something more complicated. That complexity shaped both his performances and his quiet legacy as one of Hollywood's most decorated veterans. 9. Kirk Douglas, naval combat and the making of a Hollywood tough guy. Before he became the fiery star of Champion and Paths of Glory, Kirk Douglas served as a Navy communications officer aboard the USS PC-1139, a submarine chaser hunting Japanese U-boats in the Pacific. The job was tense and dangerous. Depth charge runs could flip in an instant if the enemy struck first. That constant risk gave Douglas a natural intensity. His background as a wrestler only added to the physical presence he brought on screen. Director Billy Wilder said Douglas had what most actors have to fake, the knowledge of putting your body on the line. Douglas later became one of the first stars to form his own production company, displaying the same discipline and strategy he'd learned at sea. While he didn't make his Navy service his public identity, it sharpened the authority and conscience that powered roles like Colonel Dax in Paths of Glory. 8. Lee Marvin, a Marine scars on screen. If anyone embodied battlefield toughness, it was Lee Marvin. Enlisting the Marine Corps, he fought in the Pacific with the 4th Marine Division and was seriously wounded at Saipan, taking machine gun fire to the sciatic nerve. The injury ended his combat days, but left him with a limp and pain he carried for life. Unlike other actors who hid their pasts, Marvin wore his war on his face. Gruff, scarred, and unpolished, he turned those experiences into unforgettable roles in The Dirty Dozen, Point Blank, and Cat Ballou. Critics noted his characters didn't feel like performances, they felt like memories. Marvin once said, "You can't fake being tough. Either you've seen it, or you haven't." He had, and every glare, every growl, every line he delivered came stamped with the truth of a Marine who'd left blood on the battlefield. 7. Sterling Hayden, from OSS Commando to film noir icon. Sterling Hayden's rugged presence in film noir classics like The Asphalt Jungle and The Killing came from more than his towering physique or weathered good looks. Before Hollywood, Hayden lived one of the most dangerous double lives imaginable. As an undercover agent for the Office of Strategic Services, the CIA's forerunner, already a model and budding actor, Hayden put aside his career to enlist in the Marines during World War II. His skills as a sailor caught the attention of the OSS, who recruited him under the alias John Hamilton. dropped into Nazi-occupied Yugoslavia. Hayden coordinated supply drops to Tito's partisans and even parachuted behind enemy lines. These weren't conventional military operations. If caught, he would have been executed as a spy. For his courage, he was awarded the Silver Star and decorated by Yugoslavia itself. Yet the experience left him deeply conflicted. Hayden later admitted in his autobiography, Wanderer, that espionage taught him both pride and unease. Pride in fighting fascism, but unease at the moral compromises of undercover work. That same tension made his film performances unforgettable. Hayden excelled at morally gray roles, crooks, anti-heroes, and men navigating corruption, because he had lived in that twilight world. As director John Huston put it, Sterling had seen the worst of humanity, but it hadn't broken him. He understood compromise from the inside. His later political controversies, including briefly joining the Communist Party and testifying before WAC, only deepened his legend. Hayden's life, like his characters, was a constant struggle between conviction and survival, making him one of noir's most authentic voices. 6. Robert Ryan, the Marine drill instructor behind Hollywood's villains. Robert Ryan never saw combat overseas, but his wartime service was no less transformative. After Pearl Harbor, he joined the Marine Corps and became a drill instructor at Camp Pendleton, responsible for turning civilians into soldiers ready for the brutal Pacific Island campaigns. While he didn't fire a shot in anger, Ryan studied violence from the inside, watching how discipline, fear, and training reshaped ordinary men into fighters. That understanding later bled into his performances, where he specialized in complex villains and flawed anti-heroes. In films like The Setup and Bad Day at Black Rock, Ryan radiated menace, but always with unsettling depth. Director Nicholas Ray noted, Bob understood masculine violence, not just its expression, but its source. Off-screen, Ryan was a progressive, anti-war activist, which made his portrayals of bigots and warmongers even more striking. He wasn't glorifying brutality, he was dissecting it. Film historian David Thompson said, Ryan's villains carried an intelligence behind the menace, the sense of a man who knew how violence worked as a system, not just an impulse. That insight came straight from the training fields of Camp Pendleton, where he had once molded raw recruits into warriors. 5. Telly Savalas, from Pacific Combat to Kojak. Long before his lollipop-toting detective Kojak made him a TV icon, Telly Savalas had faced the terrors of the Pacific War. Enlisting in 1943, he served in a medical unit, but the realities of island-hopping combat soon thrust him into direct danger. Records confirm that Savalas was wounded in action, earning the Purple Heart. Unlike some stars, Savalas rarely discussed his service. Yet directors who worked with him knew the difference it made. Robert Aldrich, who cast him in The Dirty Dozen, remarked, Telly didn't need to fake toughness. When he gave an order, you believed it, because he'd lived where orders meant life or death. This authenticity shaped his unique acting style. Calm, controlled, economical. Savalas projected authority without bluster, danger without theatrics. His bald head, gravelly voice, and casual confidence turned him into a one-of-a-kind presence in Hollywood. Behind the camera, he downplayed his combat scars, but on screen, they were written all over him. His Kojak catchphrase, "Who loves you, baby?" balanced grit with warmth, perhaps reflecting a man who had endured the darkest parts of humanity, yet still chose to embrace life with humor. 4. Neville Brand, the fourth most decorated soldier to become an actor. Neville Brand didn't learn menace, he survived it. Before he was Hollywood's go-to-heavy, Brand was an infantry sergeant with the 331st Regiment, 83rd Infantry Division, fighting from France through the Battle of the Bulge and into Germany. He was severely wounded and received multiple decorations, including the Silver Star and Purple Heart, placing him among the most highly decorated veterans to turn actor. Brand rarely talked about the worst of it. When pressed, he shrugged. After you face death, pretending to be scared for a camera isn't much of a challenge. That blunt truth powered his screen presence. Directors like Don Siegel swore Brand didn't need research to play intimidation. He'd lived both sides of that equation, being scared and being scary. On screen, he gave villains unexpected depth, especially Al Capone in The Untouchables, because he understood the cost of violence. Off-screen, the war lingered. Alcoholism and a restless edge shadowed his career, lending that wounded under the toughness quality critics often noted. With Brand, the glare, the stillness, the sudden snap weren't theatrics. They were reflexes forged in foxholes. 3. Charles Durning, From Normandy to Broadway. Charles Durning was known as the king of character actors. He played cops, crooks, and kindly fathers with effortless realism. But that truth came at a cost, because before he stepped onto a Broadway stage, Durning was storming the beaches of Normandy. Drafted into the U.S. Army, he landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day, one of the bloodiest days of World War II. He survived when so many of his unit didn't. Later, he fought through the Battle of the Bulge and was even wounded by a bayonet in hand-to-hand combat. He was captured by German soldiers, narrowly avoided execution, and eventually escaped. For his service, he received the Silver Star and 3 Purple Hearts. But like so many veterans, Durning rarely spoke of it. When pressed, he simply said, "I was just a survivor. I didn't do anything extraordinary." Yet audiences noticed something extraordinary in his acting. Whether he was playing a corrupt cop or a weary priest, there was a gravity in his performances, a lived-in authenticity. That wasn't training. That was Normandy. Durning carried the weight of survival. But another star carried the weight of command, from a Hollywood set straight to the cockpit. 2. Richard Boone, From Fighter Pilot to Frontier Gunslinger. Richard Boone was television's ultimate gunslinger in Have Gun, Will Travel. But before the spurs and revolvers, Boone served as a fighter pilot during World War II in the U.S. Navy. Flying combat missions in the Pacific was no glamorous affair. Pilots faced anti-aircraft fire, mechanical failures, and the constant possibility of a fiery crash. Boone saw men die around him and narrowly escaped death himself. When he transitioned to acting, his performances were always sharp-edged, haunted by an inner toughness. Even in Westerns, Boone's characters carried the weight of moral conflict, the kind only someone familiar with real war could understand. Critics often noted that Boone didn't just play a man of violence. He seemed to know one. His war service gave him credibility that television audiences instinctively felt. Boone's work gave him grit. But the next star, he carried scars so deep that even Hollywood couldn't hide them. 1. Audie Murphy, America's deadliest movie star. With his boyish face and slim build, Audie Murphy looked more like a schoolboy than a soldier. Yet he became the most decorated American of World War II. He earned the Medal of Honor, 3 Purple Hearts, the Distinguished Service Cross, and more, credited with killing over 30 German soldiers in confirmed actions. His most famous feat? Mounting a burning tank destroyer and single-handedly holding off a German company. Wounded, but unstoppable. Hollywood came calling after James Cagney saw his Life magazine cover. Unlike many veterans, Murphy's career was built directly on his war record. His autobiography, To Hell and Back, became a film starring himself, but the movie softened the reality, glossing over the psychological scars he carried. Off-screen, Murphy battled what we now know as PTSD. He slept with a pistol under his pillow, endured nightmares, and once terrified his wife during a flashback. Yet this inner struggle gave his performances a rare authenticity. Film historian Janine Basinger noted his 1,000-yard stare wasn't acting, it was lived experience. Murphy's career as a Western hero allowed America to celebrate his bravery while avoiding the darker truths of combat. As director Don Siegel said, Audie had seen and done things the rest of us could only imagine. You could always see it in his eyes.